according to the Huffington Post, they state that the New York State Board of Elections removed Sanders from the primary election ballot today, disappointing Sanders and activists who called on the board to give a few New Yorkers a chance to cast symbolic votes for him. Although Sanders withdrew from the presidential primary earlier this month and endorsed Vice President Joe Biden shortly afterward, he insisted that he would remain on the ballot in states that have yet to vote. Sanders and his allies want to accumulate enough convention delegates to be able to influence the Democratic Party platform and rules. The Biden campaign has indicated that it is open to working with Sanders on compromise over convention delegates. So, basically what happened was this was, of course, the New York State Board of Elections. And if I know anything about the New York State Board of Elections, I know that they're very similar to California in the sense that they're corrupt, if not just as corrupt, if not more. And the Sanders supporters, and I've mentioned it on my Twitter before, had been actively fighting against this. And I'm going to mention that a lot of them really try to draw the campaign's attention to this issue, saying they're going to try to get Bernie off the ballot. We need to know what to do. We need help. They were not responded to with any sort of answer in any way, shape, or form. And Another thing that they did was say that this was due to safety concerns. They specifically stated that, let me quote this from the New York Times. In making the decision against holding a primary, which had been scheduled for June 23rd, the Democratic chair of New York State Board of Elections called the primary essentially a beauty contest that the state could ill afford in the face of the coronavirus pandemic. So he's comparing people's democracy and people's election to a beauty contest, saying that, no, we don't need to do this because Bernie Sanders dropped out. Now, let's talk about that for a second. Bernie Sanders dropped out. This is exactly why he shouldn't have dropped out. He literally gave up all his leverage, and we told him this. We said, if you drop out, you're not going to have anything to kind of gamble with, to kind of hold them against. And this is exactly what we're seeing happen now. I'm not surprised this is happening. It is infuriating in the general sense of, wow, look at our elections. We live in a fascist oligarchy. I mean, I don't know how much more they have to keep doing to you for you to actually stop giving them any sort of credit. And I think, and I'm just like flabbergasted that people are still trying to work inside the party in regards to even presidential elections or even congressional elections, when we're going to see exactly why this doesn't work. And they're saying, of course, that this is because of the coronavirus, but they're opening back up. Not only New York, but several states across the country are going to start to open back up. Further, if we recall, during the Wisconsin primary, Democrats didn't really care to endanger people. Also, during the Illinois, Florida, and Arizona primaries, Democrats didn't really give a damn about risking people's lives as long as they could hurry up and push the primary to make sure Joe Biden was the nominee. Now that Bernie Sanders is no longer in the race, now they turn it around and say, oh, we do have to, we shouldn't even have primaries because we want to make sure people are safe. Yet they're still having their down ballot candidates, not to mention the fact that we could also see vote by mail happen. But none of that matters to them because they're not operating by the rules of democracy. They're operating based on any rules they make up. And this is why you can't work with the DNC. This is why you can't work with Democrats. This is part of election fraud. This right here, they can just move and change the rules to fit whatever they want. And I think that's what a lot of people are missing here when they dismiss election fraud. It's not just one thing. It is a coalition of things. It's so many things that come together to really make it so Bernie Sanders or anybody like him never has a shot at the presidency. And that's something that we need to absolutely be facing, especially right now when there is a chance to actually have more of a real mass revolution movement. Johnny, what do you think about that?
Yeah, he shouldn't have dropped out. I mean, that's what it comes down to. I mean, he dropped out, so I mean, you kind of expect them that they're gonna do something like this, you know?
Yeah, I mean, him dropping out, it was him giving all his power, and all of his supporters told him. But I'm gonna mention right now somebody that actually wanted Bernie Sanders to drop out. Right? Because if we recall, and if we've been paying attention to who were the problematic people, the top advisors in the Bernie Sanders campaign, Jeff Weaver was one of them. And Jeff Weaver today had a response that I wouldn't call anything less than grandstanding. And it's grandstanding because Jeff Weaver was one of the people that urged Sanders to drop out of the race. And this is his response regarding the New York primary. He said, "Today's decision by the State of New York Board of Elections is an outrage, a blow to American democracy, and must be overturned by the DNC. Just last week, Vice President Biden warned the American people that President Trump could use the current crisis as an excuse to postpone the November election. Well, he now has a precedent thanks to New York State. While we understand that we did not have the votes to win the Democratic nomination, our campaign was suspended, not ended, because people in every state should have the right to express their preference. What the Board of Elections is ignoring is that the primary process not only leads to a nominee, but also the selection of delegates, which helps determine the platform and rules of the Democratic Party. No one asked New York to cancel the election. The DNC didn't request it. The Biden campaign didn't request it. And our campaign communicated that we wanted to remain on the ballot. Given that the primary is months away, the proper response must be to make the election safe, such as going to all vote by mail rather than to eliminating people's right to vote completely. New York has clearly violated its approval delegate selection plan. If this is not remedied, New York should lose all the delegates to the 2020 Democratic National Convention, and there should be a broader review by the Democratic Party of New York's checkered pattern of voter disenfranchisement. So, okay, I agree with everything he said, that it's wrong, but why didn't he say this sooner? Why when the activists and the Sanders supporters still calling people, working hours for free to get people to vote for Bernie Sanders, to get people to be informed that, hey, he may not be on the ballot? Why didn't you say something before? Why now are you coming out and saying this? And further, why did you ask Bernie Sanders to drop out? Why were you one of the people pushing for Sanders to drop out if you really cared about people exercising their right to vote? This is reactive. This is not proactive. And the fact that Jeff Weaver is all of a sudden giving a damn about the elections really doesn't tell me much other than he's just grandstanding. And we don't have time for that. And I think it's really a disservice to the Sanders supporters, to the people who have really put so much effort into even now trying to get something, trying to work within the party. It just shows you that they don't care. They don't care. They don't care to work with you. They don't care to do anything for you. Stop. To me, this is abusive. It's so abusive. And we need to stop participating in that abuse and enabling that abuse, because this is going to continue to happen because we never call them out. We just continue to do what they want us to do. And until progressives freaking learn that, you're not going to get anything. You're not going to get anything from the Democratic Party. He mentions that the Democratic, that Joe Biden's campaign was working with Bernie. Do you really think that Joe Biden's campaign is going to say, no, this is wrong? Even if they say it, are they going to mean it? They're not going to mean it because they don't care. This benefits them. This is all about maintaining power. This was all about making sure Sanders gets absolutely nothing. And even bigger than Sanders, progressives, because they don't have to, because you don't hold them accountable. And it's that simple. Until you hold them accountable, nothing is really, really going to happen. And the worst part is California is threatening to do the same exact thing. So as you guys know, Governor Newsom, who hasn't responded to any of this, and Rusty Hicks have been under pressure. Rusty Hicks is the chair of the California Democratic Party. And he has been called on by people like Ro Khanna, who have been hearing these murmurs that they're going to try to do this, which the same thing they did in New York to Bernie Sanders, but in a different way. So Rusty Hicks responded to Ro Khanna, who said, Governor Newsom, Gavin Newsom, and Rusty Hicks, please live up to your commitment that the Bernie Sanders should keep the delegates he earned in California. He had endorsed Biden, but stripping him of his delegates is an affront to the primary process and the policies he is fighting for. Let us know. So Ro Khanna tweeted at Gavin Newsom about this, and Rusty Hicks, and Gavin Newsom didn't respond, but Rusty Hicks did. And Rusty Hicks said, "My hope, you must be confusing the California Dem for the DNC/Joe Biden. My hope is the presidential campaigns collaborate, and I understand they are doing so, to reach a delegate allocation that upholds democratic principles, unifies our party, and helps us win the White House in 2020. And
principles unify our party.
Yeah, right. It's all. I mean, and we know because we've been following who Rusty Hicks is. He is just of the same caliber of politician as an Nancy Pelosi's, a Dianne Feinstein's of the world, the establishment. So they're just playing and gaslighting here. If we read the rest of the responses, you're going to see exactly how they're doing. Just below that, Jonny, Rokana says, the question is simple. It's not one of legalese. Do you believe that all the statewide delegates Bernie earned through votes should go to him? What do you stand for and believe in? That's what California progressives want to know. And to this, Rusty also responded, giving us the total number of delegates Sanders has, which, by the way, even though we won, like I said, this was one of the worst primaries in the entire country. And he responds by saying, here are the total, the California delegate allocation is Sanders 225, Biden 172, and they go over as to which ones they are. You guys can see them there. But then Rusty Hicks says further on, he on the thread, he goes on to say, while Rule 11C of the DNC delegate selection outlines the allocation process once a campaign is suspended, I'm told the Sanders and Biden campaigns are collaborating on an equitable delegate allocation. That is not the same thing as Sanders keeping all his delegates. Like, that is not the same thing as Sanders keeping all his delegates. He's literally saying, oh, they have to talk it through and they have to come to a conclusion to see how the delegates are going to be allocated. That is not the same thing that Sanders are saying. And he says, I encourage the campaigns to reach an agreement quickly so we can all get about the business of removing 45 from the White House. Okay, so this is just basically gaslighting because he's not answering the question. Because Rokana, and I know Nina Turner also called him out, are asking him like, hey, just, make sure that Sanders gets his delegates fair and square. California went for Bernie Sanders in a big way. And to strip him of his delegates after the fact is completely undemocratic. And it doesn't make any sense. So they're obviously just punching. And you would think they'd be smart enough to actually be more open to progressives if they really wanted their votes. But the thing is, guys, they don't care because they don't need your vote because they're going to select Biden anyway. And they don't really care if they lose to Donald Trump. It's never been about beating Trump. It's always been about beating Sanders, and they've managed to do that. So that's the bottom line. And that's what we have to be really aware of, and that's one of the things we really have to be have in the back of our minds when we're deciding if you're really going to vote for Joe Biden or if you're even going to entertain the idea of working within the Democratic Party if they really do this to you time and time again. So that's the update on that. I urge people to really, really push the Joe Biden drop out, never Biden hashtags, because those have been coming along really well, and that's what we need to really do because the Democrats really are laughing in our faces right now, thinking that they can do what they want and get away with it.